Chapter 2 Navigational Hazard. After my conversation with a dull old man, I made my way back to cabin number 5, eager to pack up our things. When I got up to the cabin, my family was waiting for me by the wooden door. Sophia sat on her backpack with a slightly depressed look on her face, while Peter quickly put down his cell phone as he saw me coming. I had no intention of chastising him at the time, since we had only just arrived, but if his transgressions against my will continued, that phone would soon be in my possession. Lorraine was sitting in a rocking chair at the front porch and smiled at me as I came closer. "How did it go?" she asked and stood up from the rickety chair, which continued to swing back and forth. "Just fine. The cabin's ours now, for a time at least," I said, happy to finally see the end of our journey here. Now, I thought, only relaxation remained. After settling in, I decided that we would wait until tomorrow to explore the surrounding area of Nordstar Plateau and make our first trip into Cordale. I wanted them to get the feel for the place before venturing into the town itself for a peaceful shopping and food tour. I was prepared for some high-quality time after reading up on some of the shops and restaurants online. I hoped they were as good in real life as they were on pictures. The star-spangled evening was calm, and we all sat on a square carpet around a low-glass table. Being so close to the ground, we strongly felt the evening summer breeze blow through the slightly ajar door leading out of the cabin into the untamed wilderness outside. The scent of flowers and trees I had experienced earlier once again reminded me of our close proximity to nature. It was good, I thought, that we all finally managed to do something together after so many years of me and Lorraine being largely separated from our children. Lorraine had previously stated that she wanted us to share some real family time together that evening, and thus we decided to play some cards. After arguing for and against, we finally managed to agree playing a few rounds of poker. We went for best of 3, and me and Sophia had both won 1 round each. The final round was now in its last stage, and Sophia was just about to make her move. "Oh no, you don't. I call your hand," she retorted, and glared playfully at me. I had to come clean and threw my cards on the table, confident that I had outranked her. My hand consisted of 3 9s and 2 aces, which I hoped would be enough to beat her. At first she eyed my cards anxiously, but then revealed her hand. The cards showed that she also had a full house. Her hand consisted of 3 10s and 2 jacks. At first I thought that I had won, but then came to the realization that her 3 10s outweighed my aces, thus making her the apparent winner, not only of this, but of the entire set of games. Seeing as I was always a sore loser, I got up from the floor and went over to the door. Lorraine knew that such things always ignited my anger, and tried vainly to calm my roaming mind. There, darling, it's just a game," she said. "Whatever you say, I'm going to the toilet. When I get back, we're all going to sleep. That's an order," I said heatedly, and turned around, heading out into the dark forest in hopes of finding a toilet. The moon stood high in the sky, but its light was mostly shaded due to the dense canopy of Seraphos Weald on Nordstar Plateau. Because of that annoying old man, I had totally forgotten to pick up a map during my time at the reception earlier. Even though I was somewhat disoriented, I decided to head over to the main lodge and use the toilet within. I strode off towards the lodge on a gravel path illuminated by dim, orange-colored night lamps. I walked along the path for a few minutes before stumbling upon a crossing where the road split in 3. The way ahead led to the lodge, while the other 2 set off to the left and right. The lodge was hard to miss from here due to it being illuminated by spotlights in the ground. I examined my options while momentarily halting at the crossroad section. Aided by the night lamp waypoints, I discerned a small brick building just a short way off down the right-hand path. The edifice was adorned with a familiar WC mark, and it was much closer than the main lodge. I quickly decided to abandon my current course and headed off in the direction of the small brick house toilet instead. As I came up to the small structure, I noticed that the door was already slightly ajar. Before I had the time to react, a sound of something falling to the ground suddenly caught my attention. The sound was that of glass shattering on a mason floor. It came from inside the toilet, but I was unable to see any movement from my location. "Hello?" I asked cautiously, trying to solve this mystery before risking anything going out of hand, but there was no reply. As a bad habit of ages past, I always carried a gun. I didn't even have a reason for it during times of peace, but as a true patriot, I told myself that it would benefit in the protection of me and my family. I pulled up the gun from my belt without hesitation and poked the metal barrel at the creaking door, giving me passage inside. I then made my way to the junction point with careful steps. A sign on the wall ahead told me that the ladies' was to the left and the men's bathroom to the right. I positioned myself against the wall and felt my pulse quickening with each passing second. There was still no answer, but some kind of shuffling now caught my attention instead. It came from the direction of the men's toilet. I quietly made my way towards the noise while scurrying along the wall. I came up to the bend before long, and the men's bathroom was just around the corner. I carefully bent down and peeked around the corner, trying to ascertain the origin of the sound. There was nothing out of the ordinary there, at least not in plain sight. The fluorescent strip lighting above the toilet sink area flickered to and fro and only added to my uneasiness. A pungent smell of sewage rose up from the drainage holes in the bathroom floor. I carried on after some deliberation and made my way into the bathroom itself. The first thing I noticed was a dripping shower followed by 5 closed toilet booths. The sudden sound of plastic creaking echoed from one of the booths, though I was still unsure which one. "I'm not here to hurt you. Make this easy on yourself," I said in a calm tone of voice, but there was still no answer. I grew more impatient, and the need to urinate soon grew unbearable. I got in closer and pushed open the first toilet door, revealing a white toilet seat and a paper roll rolled out on a black and white tiled floor. I then cautiously opened the second toilet door, but the inside of that one was also empty. When I came to the third toilet, I saw shards of some kind of glass canister scattered on the floor. In the blinking radiance from the strip light to my right, I noticed a thin needle with some blood on it amongst the shards. This situation reminded me of the skirmish 10 years ago against that terrorist group when we were forced to follow them into an underground complex. Just as I stood up from the floor and was about to bang on the fourth toilet door, the fifth door suddenly burst open and somehow loosened from its hinges. The frame flew towards me, but I threw myself out of the way just in time. Before the wooden door hit the floor, a hooded individual leapt out from inside the fifth toilet and pushed me aside in their flight, then made a run for it. My reactions from my many years in the military were faster though, and with a swift motion I caught the hood of the person trying to escape and held them fast. The person struggled to break free, but my grip was unrelenting. Judging by the person's strength, I deduced it to be a male. I then grabbed hold of the person's arm and pushed him against the fourth toilet door to restrict his movements. I then carefully put the gun back in my belt. "Damn you, old man! Leave me alone!" the individual barked angrily. It was a man in his mid-20s. "Who are you? What were you doing in here?" "Oh, please, I beg of you, whatever you do, don't tell the hostel owner that you found me here." The man was apparently desperate. "He'll sack me for sure." So this was Eric, the old man's attendant. "Are you Eric?" I asked. Yes. Do I know you?" he stuttered with a trembling voice. "No, but the proprietor told me about you. He failed to mention the fact that you're taking drugs, though," I said, implying the broken glass canister I'd seen earlier. "If I let you go, will you stay if I promise not to tell the old man anything about this?" Yes," the young man sighed, and corrected his hood after I let him go. Aside from the general view on drugs, I held an immense hatred towards people who used them, but tried my best to conceal it. Somewhat certain that my words had reached the youth, I went inside the fourth toilet and carried out my urination needs, and then flushed afterwards. A sudden flash passed by my inner eye during that moment, and I almost fell to the floor. I barely managed to keep myself standing by grabbing onto the toilet booth's upper rim. "Hey, are you all right in there?" the young man asked, and knocked at the door. I stood up and went outside, facing the man vis-a-vis. "I think so," I stated with a sigh, and walked past him towards the bathroom's metal sink. The young man stepped away and positioned himself by the men's room's exit. His wavering eyes and numbed pose somehow reminded me of someone else, although I wasn't really sure who. I was unable to place the memory in my mind, and instead gazed at my reflection in the mirror in front of me. After having lost myself in thought for a moment, I pulled up the metal handle on one of the toilet faucets, and to my surprise, there wasn't any water coming from it. I tried the other handles, but they were also clogged up. I felt a slight anger coming on, and tugged and pulled at the first one over and over, convinced that it was just a temporary stop in the system. "Hey, calm down, man," the young man said, and looked at me with a detached expression. After a couple of pushes and pulls, a sound echoed from inside the pipes leading up to the sink. I left the handle in the upright position, and suddenly, a single black drop forced itself through the pipe mouth and fell onto the metal sink. Only seconds after the strange black drop had fallen, the sound of police sirens shrieking could be heard from outside. The jingle from the sirens, however, was warped and distorted somehow, as if they were playing backwards and in slow motion. The flickering strip light above the toilet sink suddenly went out with a bang, and the faint moonlight that had shone in through the brick house windows earlier suddenly receded, almost as if it was extinguished somehow. Left was only utter darkness and intermittent flashing red and blue lights from the police cars outside. There was some kind of pervasive danger in the air, and true enough, the blackness from the single drop in the sink somehow started to swell and reach beyond its initial point of entry. I gleaned a growing fear in Eric's face, and a force deep in my mind told me to flee at the sight of the police vehicles. "Come on, Eric, let's get out of here," I yelled, as logical deduction failed me and fear took over my thoughts. "But I don't think they're after me," he proclaimed and shrugged his shoulders. I interrupted him and continued with a high voice. "They're after both of us, and we have to leave right now." Eric somehow believed me, and for that I was thankful, since I hardly believed myself at that point. Before leaving, we grabbed the 2 emergency flashlights in the safety box beside the exit. With Eric in tow, I made my way out through the main entrance of the brick house toilet. We then ran off into the pitch-black surrealistic forest out of pure panic.